Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we will present to you about our assignment studies, which is on subject bibliography and study of Islamic sources. This is taught by Dr. Fawaz, and our book is Knowledge Triumphant by Franz Rosenthal. This is our group member. My name is Muhammad ARIFUDDEN bin Muhammad Ali, and my friend is AMANI SAADAH binti AHMAD LOKMAN, SITI ZULAIKHA binti ABDUL RAZAK, Muhammad AFIQ bin Muhammad HANAFIAH, and Muhammad Nur Fahmi bin Muhammad Aris. Now we will start with the biography of the author. Rosenthal was born in Berlin, Germany, to a Jewish family on 31/8/1914 and was admitted to the University of Berlin in 1932, where he studied classical and Oriental languages and civilization. He received his PhD in 1935 with a dissertation on Palmyrenian inscriptions. In 1938, he completed his History of Aramaic Studies, which was awarded the Lisberski Medal and Prize. In 1938, Rosenthal left Germany and went to Sweden, where he was invited through the good office of the Swedish historian of religions H.S. Nyberg. From there, he went to England and eventually came to the United States in 1940, having received an invitation to join the faculty of the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, Ohio. He returned to academia first at SUC and in 1948 moving to the University of Pennsylvania in 1956. He was appointed the Louis M. Rabinowitz Professor of Semitic Languages at Yale University. He became a studying professor in 1967 and emeritus in 1985. Next. Book information. The author is Franz Rosenthal, publisher by Brill 2007, year published 2007, printed in United States. Chapter 1, the knowledge before knowledge. In this chapter, there is the root, the number one topic, which is talk about the author examines the philological data, arriving at the conclusion that Arabic alone among the Semitic languages developed the term ilm as meaning knowledge. The evidence of poetry in this topic, it talk about in pre-Islamic poetry, knowledge emerged as something gradated which has to be acquired, which possess intrinsic value and which has its circumscribed limits. In chapter 2, the revelation of knowledge. In a word count and its meaning, the author proceeds to a word count of the root ilm, yani knowledge, finding that it was concept that the Prophet want to be noticed, and that every single occurrence of the root forms part of a plan to condition receptive minds to knowing as a basic force in the new religion. In the motivating force behind the Quranic use of ilm, the author says that the motivating force behind the Quranic use of ilm could not possibly have come from pre-Islamic Arabic. With its limited scope of knowledge, he believed it had to come from some unorthodox Christian discussions. In the human knowledge and divine knowledge, the study of the concept of knowledge in the Quran reveals that our human knowledge of any real value is religious knowledge. Divine knowledge is basically identical with human knowledge, though of a higher order, they are interlocking and interdependent. In Jahiliyah, the author said that the way it is used is another indication that in the mind of the Prophet, unawareness of or opposition to his message was equivalent to ignorance as being the opposite of knowledge and religion. In the last part, which is wisdom and knowledge, hikmah and ilm became more synonyms for most Muslims. If a distinction was made, hikmah usually came after ilm. This is well exemplified by a passage from the Kitab Al-Uqud Al-Hakim Al-Tirmizi, who declares that God brought forth knowledge in the beginning, and from knowledge he brought forth wisdom as hikmah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm ZULAIKHA binti ABDUL. Metric number 1181680. So I'll proceed with the chapter 3, the plural of knowledge. Next. The plural of knowledge. Ulum, the accepted plural of ilmu, does not occur in the Quran in the old tradition of the Prophet. Ulum might have once existed, but then main domain until it gained wide currency in Islamic times. Some monograph on tradition and knowledge. Imam Malik mainly focused on moral prescription, does not seem occur in related wisdom literature. All collection of wisdom saying of non-Arabic and Arabic origin. Arabic possesses a comprehensive abstract notion of knowledge ilmu. The use of ilmu as a specialized discipline appears to be attested in a verse of Kutayir Azah, and she said, I went to the Banu Lihbu seeking al-ilmu with them, since the ilmu of those who practice agree has been entrusted to them. All ulum must be considered interdependent. Therefore, it will be foolish to cultivate one and neglect the others, for the purpose of all of them alike is man's salvation.
Next, chapter 4, definition of knowledge. Before I describe detail about my chapter, let me introduce myself first. My name is Muhammad Fahmi bin Muhammad Aris, metric number 1181685. Okay, in this chapter, I would like to share with you there are two main points here. First, knowledge is the process of knowing and identical with the knower and the known, or it is an attribute enable the knower to know. And second, knowledge is cognition, means ma'rifah. Okay, knowledge is the process. There is 5 points. First, knowledge is the truth which one knows. Second, knowledge is the truth which the essence is knowing. And third, knowledge is the truth which the object known, al-ma'lum, is known. And fourth, knowledge is the truth which the knower knows the object known. And lastly, knowledge is the truth which the knower is knowing. And next, for knowledge is cognition, means ma'rifah. Knowledge is the cognition of the object known as it is ala ma'huwabi. This definition was adopted by Al-Baqillani, therefore often credited to him. It is, however, clear that Al-Baqillani was not the rest to use it. The last word of the definition is exceptionally replaced by alayh. This appeared to be a mere oversight. In the boot, this definition occurs also at the very beginning of the list of definitions. It is difficult to say whether this omission is another mistake, just as Ibn Sabit subsequent use of alayh for B, or whether it was intended to be another meaningful variant.
Okay, so I'll proceed with chapter 5. Knowledge is Islam, theology and religious science. Next. First one is divided by 2 parts. The first one is books and chapter in knowledge. So the author specifically explain what knowledge about by Al-Ghazali, Book of Knowledge, and this book contains three types. The first one is the relationship with religion, theology, and jurisprudence. So the importance of teachers and students, it really helps for those who is seeking the knowledge, especially from both of logical and conventional perspective. The author of Book on Knowledge is related and comparable with Al-Ghazali's book. A part of this book can be as elaboration of the Ihya of Al-Ghazali, and this book divided by 5 parts included human beings elements in the law of Moses. Next. Okay, the second one is knowledge and faith. So generally it's touched about the evidence in Muslim religious writing of the introduction of faith and knowledge. These subtopics just focusing on the theologians and relatable between knowledge and faith. And there is opinion commented about the faith, and he mentioned for not use the holy words and religion wisely as aspect of epistemology. The second part is ilmu and adab anthologies. This chapter shows about ilmu and adab as important partner, aspects of adab and ilmu as a relevant fundamental, and it illustrates the religion's behavior by maqamat of Az-Zamakhshari, focus explain about knowledge. Adab and knowledge is totally relatable. Next. The third one is monographs in praise of knowledge and the educational literature. Abu Hilal al-Askar, the perfect man for those who are realize the excellence of knowledge and study to gain knowledge. Knowledge are perfection and seeking for knowledge which a wide process and never ending. The main and purpose of elementary education are established, and the educational literature works was spreading well widely. Both types of literature form another testimony to the knowledge icon in the society. The fourth is materials for an appraise of knowledge as a society force. There's 4 parts. The first one is the attitude towards dogs. The second one is limitation on individual knowledge. The third one, personal feelings of the scholars. And the last one is knowledge as life and as food for the soul.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is AMANI SAADAH binti AHMAD Umain, matric number 1181864. Alright, for this chapter, which is chapter 6, the chapter is knowledge is light. What the writer want to tell us about light? Why light? Why knowledge is called as light? Alright, because knowledge consists of 3 things, which is a clear verse of the Quran said, a well-established sunnah, and fair religious duty, fariah. Also, Jesus has said there are 3 kinds of knowers, which is alim, a knower of God, a knower of the command of God, and a knower of the command of God. God is at the same time of a knower of a God. And why light is being a metaphor for a knowledge? Because knowledge is a distinct for a darkness. And in Surah An-Nur, in verse 40, it says that or they are like a darkness within an unfathomable sea which is covered by waves, upon which are a wave, over which are clouds, darkness, some of upon others. When one put off his hand, he can hardly see it, and he to whom Allah has not granted light, for him there is no light. Which means without light, our life will be in the darkness like a knowledge.
Next chapter, knowledge is top. Okay, in this chapter, I'm going to share with you there have 3 main points. First, Greco-Arabic translation terminology. Second, logic, the science of knowledge. And finally, epistemology as a tool of theology and jurisprudence. Okay, first, Greco-Arabic translation terminology. What is Greco-Arabic translation terminology? In the field of abstract vocabulary, as we have often seen in the preceding page, the consistent translation of a word from one language to another in a second language is an apparent impossibility. According to the meaning, they favor a method of translation, and in it there was definitely no space for pedantic accuracy and reproducing the vocabulary used for mental processes. Ilmu is used for frequently in Arabic than episteme is in the corresponding Greek text in relation to the individual scholarly and scientific disciplines for which Greek used the feminine singular of the adjectival formation. The Arabic word is appropriate. However, something that is hardly surprising is the most impressive part of the tabulation. This is the enormous spectrum of form in which both Greek and Arabic can express the vast realm of mental operation of some form or other. This implies that no general rule is valid in any given instance for the identification of words. There is a noteworthy amount of continuity only where a school tradition has taken hold, as in the case of Aristotle translation. And there are very numerous variations to the usage of what appears to be the chosen equivalent. Okay, next. Logic, the science of knowledge. First, in Arabic, mantiq means speech. It was selected to serve as a literal translation of Greek logos, technical meaning. The science of speech, al-ilmu al-mantiq, thus become the Muslim word for logic. For the Muslim, logic was the organ or instrument, alah, the instrument for rational speculation, the instrument for each discipline, and the means to allow the student to achieve its true meaning. Next, each of the disciplines of knowledge was clarified and stood for. It was the canon, including the rules and principles applicable to all human knowledge. It was the science of the scales, measuring any statement correctness. It was contrasted with a balancing norm by which the object of knowledge are weighed. In Islam, the history of logical studies remain to be published. The words preserved are various. Indeed, in later centuries, and in particular in the great expanse of Muslim territory located to the east of Arabic countries, the development of logical treatises appears to be growing. And finally, epistemology as a tool of theology and jurisprudence. The discussion of knowledge and its subdivision is in turn arranged in four sections. The first section discusses the meaning of knowledge and the definition that have been proposed for determining this meaning. In this context, the opinion of the sophists that there is no way for attaining any knowledge is mentioned as usual, but it is not discussed in detail. The development outline make it unlikely and indeed impossible that works on the principles of jurisprudence could have an introduction dealing with knowledge before such introduction had made their appearance in work on speculative theology. The relevant legal material that has been preserved is large and has not yet been adequately studied. Innumerable lawyers, the political leaders of the Muslim community everywhere, were trained for their profession by the study of work of the kind described. They were thus strongly imbued with the idea that in their legal work they were engaged in the application of knowledge. Theirs was a particular knowledge involved from certain source according to certain rules. It was also knowledge resting, also it was believed on a scientifically demonstrable epistemological basis.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So next we continue with the next presentation, which is knowledge is associative for chapter 8. And we conclude that information is the cement that holds together any human society, which is the goal of knowledge itself is always identical, but the stages may be marked by different terminology. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah said, the lovers' knowledge feel a stronger attraction and infatuation than do lovers for their beloved. And even the most beautiful human form may not be capable to divert many a lover knowledge from his one true love. So, the knowledge itself is represent different nations and value. It means knowledge is something that combine society within nations, within values, and within um, races. Alright, to the next slide.
Okay, next, the advantage of this book. There have 3 points. First, books for college level are classified into a reference book, monograph, book teaching, and modules. There are still books found on the market which belong to popular books or trade books, which are read by the general public. Second, this book provides a theoretical explanation, philosophy, and guidelines arranged in part by section or chapter by chapter continuous. And lastly, mostly this book using clear concept as a learning handbook. It is only natural that textbook writes about vague concept or theories. If you want to use a reference source as a reference, use a clear concept. The goal is clear to avoid confusing and mistaken thinking for student.
Okay. My name is Muhammad Afiq bin Muhammad HANAFIAH. Matric number 1181673. Okay, I will discuss about this disadvantage of this book. Despite this book is very informative, but the structure of this book is not able to attract other people to read it. Besides, the words used in this book are quite high, which some words are difficult to understand. Okay, next. Recommendation for this book, I highly recommended this book to all of you because there is a lot of discussion in this book about the nation of knowledge in Islam. This book must be seen as a significant contribution to a deeper understanding of some of the important aspect of knowledge and its correlation with faith. Next, readers with sundry interest will find in the several chapters insightful discussion of their field of specialization documented with a large mass of source material awaiting further analysis and study. This book is really good because it is discussed of what is understood as God's knowledge and human knowledge of God. Each of the section explained clearly. Okay, next. Okay, by the way, this is a recommendation for this book. A monumental task to have surveyed so deeply into the annals of medieval Islamic civilization perspective on knowledge. Franz Rosenthal argues deftly that it was the main inspiring force behind the motivation of the different empires which took up the banner. Quoting Plato, Jesus, Aristotle, Ghazali, Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Shafi'i, and various other exalted prophets, imams, and teachers throughout. This work rarely becomes boring. It is interspersed with poetic anecdotes, funny stories, and wise saying, all revolving around medieval Islam high esteem for knowledge. Highly recommended for lover of wisdom, history, and humanity in general. Okay, that's all from us. Thank you.